Good morning, or good afternoon, as the case may be. I am Adam Lupel, IPI Vice President, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this special Women, Peace, and Leadership Series event, co-hosted with the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung, Women, War, and Leadership, a Gendered Perspective on Peace and Conflict in Ukraine. Like so many around the world, IPI has been seized of the issue of the war in Ukraine and its broad impact on the international community and everyone around the world. Among recent activities, IPI hosted the high-level launch meeting of the Group of Friends of Accountability following the aggression against Ukraine. This event today comes upon the occasion of a very special visit to the United States of a delegation of women leaders from Ukraine sponsored by FES. And I understood you're just coming from an extraordinary series of meetings in Washington. We are grateful to FES for their partnership and for their dedication to amplifying these critically important voices. Despite the critical role that women are playing in Ukraine now and must play in any future path to peace and to national reconstruction, the perspectives of women have been all too noticeably absent from the dominant narratives of the war. As such, it is a genuine honor to welcome the delegation from Ukraine to the International Peace Institute and to take the opportunity to listen to them and to learn from their experience. And I think we all agree we must listen, because what is happening in Ukraine today has consequences for the entire globe tomorrow and into the future. We will turn shortly to our conversation with the visiting delegates, which will be moderated by my colleague, IPI Senior Fellow Phoebe Donnelly, head of IPI's Women, Peace, and Security Program. But first, I'd like to introduce Marcel Rotig, Director of FES's offices in Ukraine and Moldova. Marcel, welcome to IPI. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. On behalf of the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung, Germany's oldest political foundation, I would like to express our gratitude to the International Peace Institute for the cooperation, for your hospitality. My name is Marcel Rötig. I'm used to be, I should be in Kiev. These days this is not possible due to the war. Nevertheless, we are your guests here today, together with the Ukrainian delegation of decision makers, members of parliaments, journalists, and civil society activists. The program of visits was organized by the New York representation of the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung, and I would like to thank our representative here at the UN, Michael Bröning, and his team for this opportunity. At this fateful time, Ukraine's future will be decided on the country's battlefield. Ukraine is fighting for its freedom, its democracy, yes, for its right to exist as a nation. However, the fate of Ukraine affects the future of our entire planet. The world is back in the reality of confrontation, war, and division. And once again, this division runs through the middle of Europe. Many have believed that those days are behind us once and for all. They were tragically wrong. In this war, it is women who are particularly affected. Women are not just silent victims. From the beginning of the war, women became combatants in the Ukrainian armed forces and the territorial defense forces. They represent their country in diplomacy and ensure the vital international solidarity with Ukraine. And they take responsibility in Ukrainian politics. They save lives in the hospitals and infirmaries. They support their country as volunteers, activists, or on the railroad that is so important for transporting refugees and supplies. They take care of children and all elderly people, often when their fathers cannot be with their families. They give birth to children in basements, bunkers, or in subway stations. They work in industry and agriculture, which supplies large parts of the world, in the IT sector, in the service sector, or as self-employed. They organize protests and solidarity campaigns worldwide. But there are also women who have become particular victims through sexualized violence, rape, and torture as an instrument of war. More than 80% of all Ukrainian refugees are women. As a rule, men are not allowed to leave the country. They often look after the elderly and children, in some situations, not their own children, but also those of relatives and friends whose parents have become victims of the war. I cannot leave and cannot leave Ukraine. Without question, women play a very critical role in this war, even if their stories are often absent from the dominant narratives about the war. We would therefore like to open up a gender perspective on this war and look ahead. Ukraine will win. There will be a peace process, however difficult that might be to imagine. It will be women who must shape this dimension as well. And there will be a reconstruction of Ukraine, which will also be shaped by women in responsibility. I would like to thank our delegation very much for their willingness, for their openness, readiness to spend these days with us in Washington and in New York. Representing the group, Halina Yanchenko, Member of Parliament of Ukraine, and Odena Trego from the Independent Defense Anti-Corruption Committee will speak to you today. However, the floor will be open for the whole group. Thank you very much, and Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Thank you. So I will be moderating today's event, and I just want to flag that we will be taking questions from our in-person participants as well as from our social media channels. So please do feel free to submit questions. I want to echo the thanks and thank you all for being here, for attending the event, and for those who are tuning into this event co-hosted by IPI and FES. We're honored to be partnering with FES and supporting their vital work of amplifying the stories of women and girls in Ukraine who are experiencing war. We are also honored to have a distinguished panel here to speak with us about the gender dimensions of the war in Ukraine. For those who don't know us, the International Peace Institute is an independent, international, not-for-profit think tank dedicated to managing risk and building resilience to promote peace, security, and sustainable development. Within IPI, the Women, Peace, and Security Program is dedicated to ensuring a comprehensive understanding of the gendered effects of conflict. This work is critical as gender influences the barriers someone may face in assessing resources, engaging in political processes, and to their safety and livelihoods. While women face distinct challenges in Ukraine today, which I'm sure we'll hear about, there are also key political actors and leaders whose perspectives and expertise are key to the country's future. Listening to women and taking their perspective seriously and planning for Ukraine's future is not optional, it is mandatory. The group and the panel we have here today is not exceptional because they are women, but because they are experienced and knowledgeable political actors whose perspectives are at risk of being sidelined. Sharing the stories of Ukrainian women, including their responses to the war and the specific challenges they have faced, are vital to ensuring a comprehensive understanding of the war in Ukraine and thinking about the future. Here to speak with us now on the gender dimensions of the conflict in Ukraine are Halina Yanchenko and Ilona Tregu. And I will pose a question to each panelist to kick off their opening remarks, and then the floor will open for some discussion. So Halina Yanchenko is a member of the Ukrainian parliament and serves as the deputy chair for Sluha Narodu, or Servant of the People, in the Committee on Anti-Corruption Policy. Previously, she founded and chaired the anti-corruption NGO Anti-Corruption Headquarters and led the Civil Oversight Council at the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. Halina, can you tell us more about the intersection of gender dynamics and war in Ukraine and how that has played out for you and fellow delegates? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, many thanks to the organizers of the event, to IPI, but also to Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung, who made our visit to US possible and who put together for us many meetings, but also public event, so we can share both our personal stories, but also the situation in Ukraine, so you can hear about what is going on in our country from the first hands, so to say. My name is Halina Yanchenko. I'm member of parliament, actually deputy head of parliamentary majority. So I bear a lot of political responsibility for the country, but also in this situation, it makes it especially tense. Before the war, my topic in parliament and overall Ukrainian government was investment. I was appointed as Secretary of National Investment Council of Ukraine, which is an advisory board to President Zelensky. And actually, I enjoyed the topic a lot. It was about creating something. It was about helping business to establish their work, to create new jobs, to release products and services and stuff. Everything was like really, really good. And Ukraine was overall quite a successful and wealthy country, I would say. A country where majority of population have university degree, a country of engineers, of IT technologists, of scientists and analysts. So everything was actually like quite prosperous, and we were happy in Ukraine. Before one guy, or maybe a group of guys somewhere in Kremlin, decided that they don't like it. They don't like what's going on in Ukraine. They don't like that we have good lives, that we are becoming a democratic country, that we are becoming a wealthy country, and that we are choosing our own way. And then February 24th have started. For me, it have started at 5 a.m. in the morning when me and my husband have heard the explosions in capital city of Ukraine. And that was shocking. You don't want to wake up because you hear explosions in the capital city of your country. But for me, that moment was difficult, not because I am a high-ranked politician and I have to bear responsibility later on for what will happen in my country, but also because I'm mother of 2 children. My children are 5 and 10 years old. And so when I woke up, I was shocked, but also I thought, what should I do first? Should I take care of my children and maybe send them out somewhere to the safe place? Or should I go to the parliament to pass the martial law and see what we should how we should react to the full scale invasion? And in this regard, being female, being mother was kind of a challenge. I participated in a number of events before the full-scale invasion. A lot of people, a lot of journalists were asking, how does it feel to be a female politician, a young female politician? And I said, I absolutely fine with that. There is nothing it's not an additional challenge to be a female politician or a young politician. I was absolutely fine. But when it comes to the war, and when your life is threatened, when your children's life is threatened, but also lives of all other your co-citizens is threatened, this is a totally different story. And I never wish you to go through this experience. So as a mother, I asked my parents to take care of my children and send them out. My children became refugees. I'm sorry to tell that. It breaks my heart. But my children, me being a Ukrainian politician staying in Kyiv most of the time, but my children are refugees. They are abroad and I didn't see them for 2 months. And the worst thing is that I don't know when I will see them and whether I will see them, because I can be dead anytime. Russians have changed their strategy. So when we kicked them out from Kyiv outskirts, but also some other regions to the south and east of our country, where they still torture people, They couldn't reach Kyiv, they couldn't reach Western Ukraine, so they changed their tactics, and now they use a lot of, missiles, which they send from the long distances. So from the Black Sea, they can reach to any city around our country, even in the west or in the north, the capital city. And actually we still have a lot of ruinations, and a lot of people are being killed by Russian missiles sent from the long distances. So I learned how to live with the feeling that you can be dead any day or any moment, and that there is no guarantee that I will see my children again, and they will see me. This is something horrible, but yet again, you learn how to do it if your life and your death does not depend on you anymore. It's really difficult to say it, but it also motivates me to do a lot. Over the first 50 days of war, I didn't have a single weekend or a break. I was working, as a majority of Ukrainians, 15 or 18 hours a day just to do something, to help our country, to help our army, to help our diplomats, to speed up the victory, to get my heavy weapon, to get humanitarian assistance, or anything to help my people. And it's also a very stressing conditions, but it is motivating us. This war have changed the whole Ukrainian society, both women, but also men. Everyone or majority of population have become very involved. According to the public opinion poll, which they hold in the beginning of March, so pretty much just a couple weeks after invasion, 93% of population believed that Ukraine will win and that Ukraine will defeat Russians, despite the fact that everything was very bad and Russians were near the outskirts of Kyiv. We as a nation believed that the victory will be there on our side. But it was not only about pure belief, it was about actions. Yet another data from this public opinion poll said that 80% of population did something on a daily basis to help the country. So some, including women, have joined army, and we have about 17% of women in our army nowadays. Some have joined territory defense, some have become volunteers, some are helping in hospitals, some women, but also men, are helping to evacuate people from the shelling. We have a lot of stories of volunteers, again mainly women, who were using their cars to go to the cities and villages which are under shelling to help people to evacuate, and they were shot by Russians. You should understand that this war is not typical. This war is actually a war of aggression, and it's a war of atrocities. Russians are not aiming to hurt Ukrainian military because they are being fighted back, but they are targeting civilians. They are targeting especially women and children. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of cases recorded by our general prosecutor, the office of general prosecutor, who is a woman, by the way. The first woman in Ukrainian history is general prosecutor. She recorded thousands of cases of sexual violence against women, but also, what is the most shocking, against children by Russian soldiers. And yet, as a mother, for me, it's a big pain. It hurts me a lot that these children are basically children of war. And this is a kind of the memories, their childhood memories, that they will carry with them throughout their lives. It really, it's painful, it breaks my heart, but it also motivates me to do more, to talk to diplomats, to go to foreign business trips, to share the truth with as many people as possible, with as many stakeholders as possible, politicians, but also diplomats. And I'm very thankful to Friedrich-Ebert Foundation, which put together a special research or a book with 100 stories of women participating in this war, playing a significant role. And it's Olena Dovlikanova who was working on this project, so if we can give her a round of applause, I would appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Helena. Thank you for sharing your story so openly. And I mean, I think I can speak for many of us that hearing from you motivates us as well. So thank you so much for your openness. I'm going to turn to our second panelist, Elena Tregub. Elena has been the Secretary General of NACO, the Independent Defense Anti-Corruption Commission created by Transparency International to fight corruption in Ukraine, since 2017. Previously, she was the Director for International Assistance Coordination at Ukraine's Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, where she oversaw the management of a portfolio of over $10 billion in international development projects. Elena, to kick off your opening remarks, I was hoping you could tell us more about women's political participation in Ukraine. Particularly, we've all noticed the absence of women at the negotiating table during the preliminary talks between Ukraine and Russia. How can the active participation of women in the negotiations be ensured in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question and for the introduction, and thank you for organizing this important event. Indeed, we asked the same question. In society, because Ukrainian society is very open, pluralistic, very democratic. We have a lot of discussion in our society, and whatever things raise question, we have discussion about it. The brief answer to your question so far is that, this negotiation right now between Russia and Ukraine, when the active phase of war is waging, it is seen almost like a dangerous combat mission, because those negotiations are really dangerous. And you know that there was recorded a case of actually poisoning of our negotiators. It was in the media. For example, threats like that, are present, and therefore society right now is not questioning too much, but there are questions already. They are arising. We have Irina Vereshchuk, who is, for example, playing active role in negotiating the exchange of prisoners of war, the humanitarian mission. We have other women, 5 members of the cabinet, for example, who are actively also participating in decision making now during the war. Prosecutor General is a woman, and also if we speak about a percentage of women in the defense sector right now, it's pretty big. It's bigger than in many European countries. Helena already mentioned that over 17% of women are in the armed forces, and after the war started and the mobilization started, some women came voluntarily and increased this number. From what I know right now, the number is higher right now, but we don't know exactly how much higher. Also, National Guard, it's another part of the forces, part of the Ministry of Interior. They are also now actively fighting. There are 9% of women there, and more than, for example, we have also police. They are also right now part of this war. 22% of women now in police, and and there are a lot of senior women in senior positions in police. Then the women who rescue people, Helena mentioned, in emergency service, we have around actually 1/5, so 20% of women. And in the territorial defense, that's the units where people, try to help our armed forces. It's like the continuation of our armed forces on the ground. 8% of women. So Those are significant numbers, and women in Ukraine, they are not shy, they don't stay behind. Unfortunately, yes, we are moving towards a more Western society, to more inclusive society, and it takes some time to see women at the forefront. And of course, you understand that it's a natural development that during the war, war is masculine in its nature. It's when, you know, women, they are always kind of, you know, left at the background. And our Ukrainian war, Russia attacked us in 2014. Right now, we are going through the new phase of the war, but this war is really lasting for a pretty long time now, and women have been very active. And my colleagues, civil society, I don't know, maybe you heard it, but I encourage you also to look online. Halina already mentioned about 100 women's stories, but there is also another big study. It's called Invisible Battalion, and about Ukrainian women at war, and it shows how actually the role of women was evolving, because at the beginning of the war, which started in 2014, there was outdated Ukrainian legislation, for example, that prohibited women to take certain positions in the army, like a sniper, for example, like combatant positions. But we lifted all those restrictions right now, and women can, if women feel that they can be participating like together with men in very dangerous things, it's their choice. If they feel they are adult, we are all adult people, they can do it. There is full freedom. And unfortunately, though, when you study the distribution of women and men in armed forces, it is still a problem, of course, that women percentage is growing, but it's growing mostly in the area of lower paid positions, like, you know, logistics experts, financial experts, nurses, soldiers. And we would like it to grow also at the higher ranking position, you know, where there is, you know, really decision-making power. And it has been studied that if women participate in a peace-making process, in negotiation, the chance that the peace will be stable and sustainable grows by 35%. Because women's perspective should always be taken into consideration. You know, there are a lot of studies about how men see war, how women see war, and the main conclusion is that for women, what they think about during war, they don't think about this competition, fighting who is stronger. Women always want to protect. They want to protect their country, they want to protect their children, they want to protect their cities, the welfare, and it's a very important perspective that, you know, should be always taken into consideration. Of course, men also want to protect, but you know, there are differences in genders, and it should be acknowledged, you know, and should be inclusive. So this is the long answer to your question, but I just wanted also to mention, Halina mentioned about experience in the parliament, but you know, my experience in Ukraine truly is very interesting when it comes to gender perspective, because when I started my work at NATO 5 years ago, it was part of Transparency International Defense and Security of United Kingdom. It's a special program devoted to defense and security. And I remember how my British colleagues came to Ukraine when we were starting this whole initiative, and they said, Olena, do you think it will be okay that your team is mostly female and you will go to Ukrainian generals, Minister of Defense, head of Ukrainian defense industry, and you will say, here we come, women, and we will tell you how you should reform your ministry? What do you think they will say? How will they see you? They had those concerns of more like Western society, because they have their own gender issues in the UK, or you have here in US. And then I said, well, let's see. you know, and what we saw is that it was totally fine. It was surprising that all this, unfortunately, in the most senior meetings that we had very often situation when the civil society women were the only women, and the rest of the military officials, top-level officials, were men. But at the same time, they had no problem talking to women. They had full respect, and I can attest to that because I also worked in the government before. It just appears to be that there is a problem. There is a problem that we need to overcome of how women grow from inside those institutions, how they get promoted higher to the level of general, for example, and the level of the Minister of Defense. But we are getting there because we always, for example, have deputy ministers of defense who are female. Currently, we have Anna Malyar. Her perspective is super important because, you know, women are good communicators. Women understand very well humanitarian issues, and at war, this is very valuable. Because it's about war. It's not about just these big machines, big weapons that are, you know, killing people essentially. But it's about humanity. It's about human lives. It's a very you know, dramatic thing in life of any country, of any human. But also, women don't even shy away from the topic of the defense industry, for example. We have, you know, built expertise in this field because why women are interested in weapon in defense? Because we want to protect our country. And right now, there is very interesting phenomenon in Ukraine happening. We have different civil society organizations, even human rights lawyers who before only talked about humanitarian law, about human rights. All of them right now say that we are focused right now, our top advocacy goal, give Ukraine heavy weaponry, give Ukraine serious, you know, long-range equipment so that we protect our country. We don't want only to document war crimes. We don't want to have another Bucha, Irpin. We don't want to hear more about how many of our children are raped and killed, and women are raped and killed, and even men are raped in this war, by the way, because it's a weapon of war. Russia is using rape as a weapon of war. But we want them protected, and in order to protect them, we need security. We need equipment to, you know, keep Russians away. It's very simple. And therefore, right now, there are many delegations and groups of Ukrainian women because they are able to travel while men are fighting. And these women are going around the world right now advocating for this weapon. And you can see it online in many articles. I think it's important to notice that.
Great. Thank you so much for those comments and sharing your expertise. I mean, you both have given us so much information. So I think we're going to maybe queue up a question from the floor, and while people from the floor are thinking about their question, and Amanda will circulate with the mic, I'm going to start by really drawing on both of you have done work around corruption. So I'm wondering if you can tell us more about that. And Helena, maybe I'll start with you. If you could tell us about how is addressing corruption important to building a gender equitable and peaceful Ukraine?
Okay, let me try to get this question, although I think, as I already mentioned, a lot of topics which we've been deeply involved in, and anti-corruption was one of my topics. That was actually the reason why President Zelensky promoted me that high, like having a real desire to change the country, to make the country wealthy and people wealthy. But overall, nowadays, our main topic anyway is war, because for us it's a matter of survival, of physical survival, especially civilians. As I mentioned earlier, Russians are not targeting military or Ukrainian soldiers that much because it's harder to get them. They're fighting back and stuff like that. So they turned into torturing civilians, torturing in a very nasty way, in a very in the way that humiliates a human being. We had a lot of cases which I'm even afraid to share, like cases when mother was tied to a children and forced to see how her 11-year-old son is raped by Russian soldiers. So when you understand that this is the current, main issue of Ukraine, main issue to basically rescue as many civilians as we can, we all focus mainly on that. And I really hope that the victory will be speed up, and then we can all go back to our main topic. And I will be back to dealing with investors, which I really enjoy. And actually, I also had some meeting in Washington to actually help investors, both Ukrainian investors, but also like American investors and foreign investors, to come to Ukraine and to reinvest, to start new economics, to start new production lines, because that will be yet another issue if we don't address that. Given the fact that Russians are hitting not only military objects like military bases or military weapon, but they hit a lot of infrastructure. They are ruining schools, kindergartens, hospitals, maternity houses, but also a lot of vital infrastructure, which is food storages, which is gasoline storages, especially when we are starting a sowing campaign, when our farmers need oil, when they need gasoline to actually plant the grain and feed the world. 600 million people globally are dependent on Ukrainian agriculture. So you can imagine what kind of the coming year will the world experience without Ukrainian agriculture. And Russians don't only shell our food storages and gasoline storages, so we will fail to do a proper sowing campaigns, but they also block Odessa port, which is the main logistic way to actually export this food and deliver it to African countries, to Asian countries, and stuff like that. So I think we will be able to discuss that after the victory, and I hope that all of us, including the ladies who came from Ukraine, who came from Kyiv and other parts of Ukraine in this delegation, will be able to discuss it and to be committed to what we did before the war.
Thank you so much, and thank you for shedding light on your comments around people, jumping in where they can and switching expertise. I think that's a really important point, so thank you for flagging that. Do you have anything to add, Elena?
Sure. Ukraine inherited this Soviet legacy of inefficient state, and we've been effectively for the past, especially past decade after the Orange Revolution, and mostly after the Euromaidan revolution in 2014, we really established the new anti-corruption infrastructure, which really started functioning. And if you pay attention, actually, Vladimir Putin, before the war, he gave a very long speech where he specifically pointed out that he basically doesn't like Ukrainian anti-corruption efforts. It's not the way he said it, but this is what he actually implied. Ukraine is a very transparent country. We have issues with actually accountability, which we are now focusing on. But at the same time, during this war, we are very well aware that Russia is spreading, not during this war, but before this war even, all the time. Russia has built a narrative around Ukraine as if Ukraine is a failed state, that it is so corrupt, and so on. Okay, look, right now we are more than 80 days at war with Russia. Russian defense budget is 10 times bigger than Ukrainian. In Ukraine it's 6 billion, in Russia it's 60 billion. Actually even more, because they don't report fully their defense budget. It's more than 60 billion. Russia is 140 million people, Ukraine is 40 million people. How come that Russia, they cannot defeat Ukraine? 80 days, right? And if you study even the Russian army and Ukrainian army, if you compare, because this is my specialty, and I can tell you for sure that Ukrainian armed forces are more reformed and less corrupt than Russian armed forces. And this is the achievement of Euro-Atlantic reforms that we were going through before the war. And I believe if we didn't fight corruption in defense sector the way we did, and didn't put more transparency the way we did, I believe it would be hard for us to stand up to Russia without those reforms.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. That's really interesting. So I'm going to turn to the floor. If you could raise your hand if you want to submit a question from the floor to our panelists. Give everyone a minute to take advantage of the expertise. Yes, thank you. We'll wait one moment for the microphone.
Thank you very much for sharing. And I would like to ask you, how do you see the future of Ukraine? And how do you see the role of women in building this future? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll pose that to, I don't know who wants to start, but how do you see the future of Ukraine and how do you see the role of women in this future? Does anyone?
Think do we say? Oh, I can start.
Go ahead.
We'll switch the
Sure.
order.
No, I think we share. I think Ukrainians now are united as never before in our history because since we are a democratic society, before the war we used to have a lot of argument, a lot of discussion in society. But right now, with this war, it's existential war for Ukraine. Not only for Ukraine, not all people understand it, but it's existential war for the free world and for the whole world who shares the same values as Ukraine. Inclusive, democratic society, free society, where women are, occupying equal place with men, where all other groups, minorities, everybody is equally included. And the future is that Ukraine wins this war and Ukraine continues to build this society and becomes this beacon of, democracy and prosperity in their world and in Europe. And unfortunately, Ukraine will still stay neighbor to Russia. And Ukraine needs to build a very strong security system through alliances, through our own defense potential, to know that Russia will never be able to come back and try to execute our country as they are doing now. They are not trying to right now really occupy Ukraine or take over politically anymore. What they are doing right now, every day they are executing Ukraine, they are killing Ukraine. You can see it in the media if you look carefully. They are destroying all economic potential, infrastructure, and they are destroying people, families. We will stop that and we will rebuild Ukraine. And in our society, very often, in this Russian-speaking world, Ukraine is called anti-Russia. Ukraine is called some country that is so different from Russia, that values are opposing, and we will show, to the post-Soviet world, to those other countries that are looking at us right now, like Belarus, like Moldova, like Georgia, Armenia, that really a country can, even if you were in USSR before, it does not define your future. Your future is defined by your people. If your people have free choice and Ukrainian people choose to live a life of a democratic society, life in Europe, and if they choose so, they can do it and they can build a completely new society. And I think that's our future.
Thank you so much. Helena, did
Yeah,
you want to add on to that?
I want to add that our focus right now is to kick off Russians, to defeat Russia, to liberate those cities and villages which are under occupation. Because if you saw some pictures from Bucha, you can imagine that happened in Bucha on the outskirts of Kiev when it was under temporary occupation by Russia. And that's only one city. The same things were happening in other little satellite cities and villages in Kiev region, but other region. So you can imagine what goes on now in those 5 regions which are partly occupied by Russia now. So we are very motivated to solve that issue because that is issue number 1, to actually liberate not land, but to people who go through torture. But even after the victory, one thing that I really want you to understand, that the level of ruination was so high, the number of victims was so high, that we will need to address all those issues. And we will definitely need the help of international organizations like, I don't know, humanitarian assistance, assistance from free democratic world. Just couple data to share with you. Currently, on this stage, only after 3 months of Russian war of aggression, 2.5 million families lost their homes physically. So the situation which we face now is that after liberation of some regions, people are coming back homes from western regions of Ukraine, from abroad. So we have like refugees are coming back home. They come to their home cities and they see that there is no home. Their home is ruined. Their home is shelled. In some cases, it's only, missing windows, like broken windows, sometimes like broken roof or stuff like that. But sometimes the whole house is burned or ruined. 2.5 million families. That's a huge number. We are trying to address those issues already. Me and my husband have started an initiative, which is a voluntarily movement of people in Ukraine who want to help others to rebuild their homes. We already have 27,000 volunteers in Ukraine who are who agree or who are willing to travel from their cities and their regions to help those in need. And I think those kind of initiatives, if they are supported by international communities, by UN diplomats and UN organizations, that will be a very helpful thing and a very powerful sign of solidarity. Another thing is that medical treatment that our people will need. The latest data says that about 300 children were murdered within these 3 months, and about 500 children got serious injuries. So we are talking about all range, age range, from babies to like teenagers. Some of them lost their arms and legs. They need prosthetics and stuff like that, because once again, to live some, okay life, average life, they will need this treatment. And this is another thing that both Ukraine, but also international community should face and should try to resolve. So this reconstruction and recovery period will also take some time, and it's very important that you keep on focusing on Ukraine and the issues which we need resolved. We really hope that we will not be alone after victory is there, but you will keep on watching what is going on, supporting, helping, also spreading the word with truth about what is going on in Ukraine and what are the consequences. Nowadays, we in Ukraine protect not only our land and our people, we are forced to protect the truth itself, because Russian propaganda is poisoning with lies their own population in Russia. 70% of Russian population support war, which is sick to my opinion. But this Russian propaganda also tries to poison some Western society, and they try to actually block decisions on Ukraine. Like, there are a number of international organizations where the decisions can be made by consequences. So if one country is against, it's over. The decision is not taken. UN Security Council is among them. And UN Security Council has Russia among their members. So if UN wants to do something for Ukraine, to take a decision, to provide some assistance or stuff like that, Russia blocks it just like that. Do you think it's fair? Do you think that's how it should go on? That the aggressor can stop any help, any decisions, any political statements in favor of the country which they actually invaded in? No, that's not how it's supposed to work, because it's not the working model. So I think that international organizations should also revise how they work, revise their rules and regulations. And I'm talking about, once again, UN Security Council, but also financial institutions, which are very important, like IMF, World Bank, FATF, etc., etc. Thank you.
Can I add a little bit to this? Because Halina touched upon this question about what happens after this war to the world, to the global system of security, of global order. Well, obviously we saw that the current system doesn't work, and it's very clear. And the war that we have in Ukraine is not a regional war, it's a global war. It will affect globally everybody. It will affect your work here. You know very well what will happen in terms of the food security in the world. And the longer this war continues, the worse it will be for everybody, not only for Ukraine. The longer this war lasts, the longer it will take for Ukraine to recover. So all of us should be thinking right now how to finish this war so that Ukraine wins. And it will be, not only like best in terms of saving lives of people, but also it will be less hit for the global economy and for lives in the future of people who may die out of hunger. We should calculate in those terms. And unfortunately, yes, if UN didn't have Russia in the Security Council, Russia wouldn't use its participation as a right to kill. It's a right to kill, basically. That's what they have. And nobody can deny them this right. If there was no Russia, maybe UN Security Council would create a coalition of the willing. They would go in and would stop this war. Countries would unite and just ensure global peace. But you see, it didn't work out. And therefore, there will be absolutely, I believe, there will be a complete new look at the security architecture, what we built after Second World War, United Nations. I think, no, countries like Russia, dictatorship, aggressive, who goes into genocidal war with another independent nation, how can they be part of this security architecture? Only democratic countries who respect rules can be part of security architecture in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for your comments on this question and sharing your extensive knowledge. And I mean, the statistics you're sharing are so devastating. And thank you also for flagging some areas for the international community to think about what they can be doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give the floor one more time, our in-person participants, an option to have a question before I turn to the virtual audience. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. So my question will be about, we have a discussion in Ukrainian society now about how victory will look like. So that's why I'm curious, what will victory mean personally for you? What will victory mean personally for you?
Yes, I can repeat it as well. And this matches an online question we received as well. So what would victory look like for you?
For me, as a Ukrainian politician and official, for me the victory will be, of course, when we liberate our cities and villages. I'm talking about the borders which are recognized internationally with Donbass, with Crimea, because you should understand, once again, we are liberating people, not territory. People which were like forced to live under occupation for 8 years, which had their homes there, so they could not leave. Well, some left, but some were tied to their homes. But for me personally, as a woman, as a mother, the victory means that I can be reunited with my children. I can bring them back home. They can go to school and kindergarten. My younger child goes to kindergarten, my daughter goes to school, and they are unable to do that right now. They are studying like homeschooling basically because my mom is helping them to homeschool. But I am not even able to homeschool them because they are far away, and I'm busy like doing all these kind of things to help our country to speed up the process. So for me personally, the victory means the reunification of my family. Also, my husband is now in Kiev, and he was there, and we don't see each other that often. So I really, actually, as a person, I just want to live a happy life, to see my friends, to spend time with my children, to go them to park, or to, I don't know, for a walk to the forest on weekends. And actually, I understand that I won't be able to do that for a long time, also because Russians mined some.
Sorry, I think we're
Okay. It's loud. Because Russians, when they were leaving the occupied territories, including Kiev outskirts, they have mined a lot of territories. They mined parks, they mined forests, and stuff like that. So I understand that we won't be able to, to have a happy walk in the forest somewhere near our neighborhood. So yeah, it does affect each individual family and each individual life.
Thank you so much, and thank you for really bringing that to the personal level. Elena, did you want to?
Sure. Well, definitely winning back our country, taking back everything that Russia already took from us since 2014, definitely. But for me, victory means not only that we will, throw Russia back into their, but victory for me means that we live in a situation that probably Russia will never come back to kill us, basically. Because if you look deeper into Ukrainian history, Russia has this imperial past, and they once in a while come to kill Ukrainians. It happens today on a very large scale, but it happened in '33, it happened during World War II as well, what they were doing in Western Ukraine. And it happened before, deeper in history. So the thing is, Ukraine needs a security system, guarantees.
Thank you.
So that would be victory. Not only, do you hear me? No.
Yes, I think we're good.
It's off? That's okay. It's okay. The guarantee, I have even higher expectations than Helena. I don't only want my children to come back to Ukraine and be able to go to a park without stepping on a mine. No, I want my children to come back to Ukraine and be able to grow there, and without our country can be invaded. So it means Ukraine should become member of European Union, member of NATO, because right now we don't see any other kind of security guarantees. That would be victory for Ukraine. And if you, I just want to stress here that many, especially in the community of the United Nations family, they speak about negotiations, ceasefire, they use those terms. Ukrainians know very well that it's very clear if the war stops, there is ceasefire, there is some kind of negotiation. What does it mean? It means that Russia will come back to kill us in 3 years, in 2 years, maybe in 5 years. So victory means that they will not come back. That's what victory means for me.
Thank you very much for those comments. So I'm going to turn to a question from our virtual audience. As we're thinking about reconstruction and looking forward, someone wrote in, reconstructing a country becomes impossible if trauma is not treated. How do we address mental health issues and trauma as a result of this conflict during an eventual national?
It's obviously, you understand very well that the scale of this war is something unimaginable, and that after this war, we used to say we need to work with veterans to deal with people traumatized by war. Right now, our whole country will be veterans. Whole country basically will be people traumatized by war. So it's a huge challenge. But countries went through things like this before, after Second World War, and they rebuilt, they had good results, I believe. Of course, it's doable, but there should be a lot of international assistance, clearly. And there should be, in Ukraine, I think we have very good awareness of those things, that, the mental health, this should be, it's a very delicate issue about even how we speak about victims of rape, how we protect them, how we help them. It's such a big trauma, it's such a deep trauma that many people, majority of people, they don't even want to talk about it at this point because they are so hurt. And they will come and tell what happened to them during this war, maybe in 10 years from now or in 15 years from now. This is when they will be able even to speak about it, and we will learn more. But we are very well aware, and the whole world should help us because it's a huge, huge challenge.
Not that much to add, but actually you should understand that adults are hurt mentally by this war. I can say that I myself am hurt mentally by this war. Like, we are in U.S. in safe place, but when I hear a noise that sounds like a military jet or a shelling, I start panic. Though I understand that I am in U.S. and everything should be okay. And once again, you can imagine what is going on in the heads of children. Children who saw corpse of their neighbors, children who were forced to stay in basements or bomb shelters for 2 months. The very sad stories of children from Mariupol. Also, this recent story about this little girl. She's only 4 years old, and her mother was a nurse, basically, in Mariupol, in Azovstal, helping to treat the soldiers. This little family, mother with her 4 years old daughter, was evacuated from Azovstal, but right away separated. Russian soldiers said that they can let the 4 years old girl go to Ukrainian, basically, territory, to Ukrainian city, Zaporizhia, but her mother should stay in filtration camp because she was helping soldiers, because she was a nurse. So this 4 years old girl is separated from her mom, being in a very, so-called tender age, when everything affects her. I'm talking to my children. Actually, they didn't go through by shelling. They did not spend, days and nights in the bomb shelter, because they were evacuated during the first day of full-scale invasion to the western part of the country. But I see the way they communicate, the way they answer my question, just every day, routine question. I understand that they know everything about war. They know what is shelling. They know who is, who is killing Ukrainians and stuff like that. And that's not okay. And yes, we will be forced to treat mental health of people, adults, but also children a lot. Also, yet another question which which I have a fear to raise: those who went through sexual violence. We are talking about a lot of women, some number of men, but also children. What their lives will be like in the future. I'm afraid whether they will be able to cope with that, to overcome that, or we will see some even suicides with people who can't live with that. That happens quite often to those who experience sexual violence. So yeah, that's a part of the truth of this war of aggression that Russia has started in Ukraine.
Thank you so much, and thank you both for raising these painful issues, but that we all need to be thinking about and aware of.
Thank you so much for speaking in such drastic terms about the need to protect Ukraine and to make sure that, as you said, that Russia cannot do that. My question is, What does this mean for the future of the Russian leadership? Do you think that there is a requirement for a drastic change in the composition of the Russian leadership to make sure that Russia can learn from that? And my second question is, when you speak about the objective being liberating all territories occupied, that includes the Crimean Peninsula, are you not concerned about nuclear escalation?
Children in Kiev at the playground are discussing nuclear strike like right now. It's like a normal conversations in their village where my grandma lives. They are saying, what is the radius of the tactical move? You know, they are discussing Russian nuclear arsenal, and yet Ukrainians are not afraid. You know, because Ukrainians are just it's existential, and they will stand up to Russia no matter what. So the way I see the threat of tactical nuclear weapon, it's exaggerated, because if you analyze from the military even perspective how it is deployed, it's a very high risk that this order will not be executed, and the Russian doctrine is to use the threat of it more than really to use it. And they are threatening it openly right now. It's part of the doctrine right now. And what happens to Russia? You know, well, it's Russia. It's Russia's choice what happens to Russia. But Russia, it's right now. It should be. It should go through process to which Germany went. You know very well German history, and you know that giving us a chance as a democratic country, I don't think Russia can become a democratic country in the near future. But Russia, at the same time, it's very clear, it's a very dangerous actor in the world. It's a threat for the whole world, so they should be demilitarized, denuclearized. They country like Russia shouldn't have nuclear weapons. If they ask, is Ukraine even a country? We can also ask, is Russia even a country? What holds all these Russian parts of federation together? Why are they together? They are together because by military force, because they have this army. What happens if Russian army is broken in Ukraine? So what happens then to Russian Federation? I don't know what happens, but I think the world should have a plan, should prepare for it, and the world should, be not afraid about what really happens to Russia. Because, the way Russia is right now, I think it's the worst kind of Russia, and it's already some of the Russian politicians of the opposition, they are openly speaking out that it's in the Russian best interest that it is, divided in different parts of the federation, or somehow, not such a centralized authoritarian state as it is right now. It's basically my answer, but I think we should not be afraid. That's the thing, because the more you show you are afraid of what happens to Russia, the more you show you are afraid of nuclear weapon, the more you encourage Russia to be aggressive and to go for it.
Thank you very much. Helena, do you want to respond to that question and kind of any closing remarks that you would like to add?
Yeah, if I can combine that.
Sure, yes,
Okay.
please. And we'll see, I'm not sure, we may have lost audio for our online audience, but we have this audience in the room, so thank you for being here.
Since the beginning of war, I was invited to give short interviews for American TV, but also like Indian, Canadian, Mexican, even Iranian. And I want to repeat basically to quote myself, as I think this is a very powerful message. A powerful message that you should really keep in mind is fear in the eyes of Western leaders. This is the only thing. Putin does not see this fear in the eyes of Ukrainian political leadership. He does not see the fear in the eyes of Ukrainian army, and it frustrates him. It makes him nervous. It makes him losing in Ukraine. Over the past 83 days, he did not receive any military success, major military success in Ukraine.
he did not obtain anything he planned because he does not see fear in the eyes of President Zelensky, in the eyes of political leadership of Ukraine, and in the eye the only thing that we should all discuss is how we can all help to defeat Russia so it doesn't threaten not only Ukraine and Ukrainian security, but global security. You should understand that Russia, it looks like a hooligan in the neighborhood. It goes for smaller, for weaker, like people or residents of this neighborhood. Never ever in their life, Russia attacked unions. They only attack individual countries, which are, in their opinion, are smaller or weaker. They attacked Moldova and caused a lot of problem in Moldova, including Transnistria, which is like desert, economically, politically, and in the terms of human rights. They attacked Georgia and also caused some territories which are not, have no particular status. Then they attacked Donbass in Ukraine. They attacked Syria. And then, as they were not punished, as the reaction of the civilized world was not enough, they went for full-scale invasion, for thousands of civilians to be killed and tortured. And
Thank you.
And security threats.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. We still have so much we could talk about, and I encourage, if you have time to stay after, to continue to speak. But I just want to thank you so much and reiterate what an honor it was to get to learn and hear from both of you. And thank you so much for being here.
Sure.